Okay, guys, welcome to the Mac Forum weekly video chat. Uh, Ran a little late this week. I was supposed to get it done yesterday. We were making some changes and rearrangements in the broadcast bunker and didn't get quite done in time yesterday, so we pushed this one back to tonight. Last week, I had intended to do one on the focusing on the Worldwide Developer Conference. We were going to do that last Monday night, and we had a few issues there that prevented things. So that's what the bulk of tonight's chat will be about, some of the things coming out of Worldwide Developer Conference. If you haven't already looked at that and looked at the video, this will give you a good idea of some of the things that were discussed at the conference. Let's dive right into things and get things going here. As of about 5 minutes ago, we had a total of 302,315 members, the latest of which is someone named Milcom. And want to also give a shout out to a friend of mine who joined a little while ago, and I just noticed this week that he was here. KC Matt has joined us. KC was heavily involved with a forum that used to be called Mac OSG, the Mac Owner Support Group. A lot of interesting and knowledgeable characters. So hopefully, I know that we have a couple of Mac Forum members that used to be members of Mac OSG, and glad to have KC here. All right, let's get down to some things that came out at WWDC. First of all, the one that I thought was funny. I had seen something about this on the sports show before the developer conference and was not expecting it, what happened. Some of you who may follow baseball, particularly if you follow the Cleveland Indians, know that a while back, one of the Cleveland players hit a home run. I forget, I think it was his 100th or something monumental. I don't follow the Cleveland Indians, so I kind of lost track of which one it was. But anyway, he hit the ball into, and when it landed in the Cleveland bullpen, where all the relief pitchers are hanging out, for those of you that don't follow baseball. The bullpen is the area where those relief pitchers kind of wait to see if they're going to get called in a game. Well, they decided that they were going to hold this baseball hostage and to find out just how bad he wanted the ball back. They made up a list of demands, things that they wanted before they would be willing to give him the ball back. And one of the some of the things that were listed were, iPads, new MacBook Pros, iPhones, top range Apple gear predominantly. There were some other things on there, but I think the iWatch was mentioned a couple of times. Pretty much top range gear here. And when Apple opens the keynote last week, one of the things they bring out is the baseball. Apparently, they had agreed to pay the ransom that the pitchers were asking for the ransom. I thought that was kind of a funny way to start the keynote off. A lot of things covered in that particular keynote ran roughly 2.5 hours, give or take a few minutes. I didn't take note of absolutely everything. We'll kind of run through it real quickly to give you an idea of some of the things that stuck in my mind. To be honest with you, I'm not a good enough typist to take note of everything. I was sitting there with the keynote going on the Apple TV and typing notes into my iPad real quickly. One of the things that came up, let's get started with this. This is something I found interesting. The participants for this year's Developers Conference represented 70 countries, from as many as 70 different countries. And the youngest programming scholarship recipient this year was 12 years old. I think in the past they've had one a little bit younger, but this year it was a 12-year-old, which is kind of embarrassing to me since I can't program my way out of a paper bag. as Microsoft Excel has demonstrated to me on numerous occasions. But there were, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and this would be interesting to me if I were involved in programming and couldn't make it to San Francisco for the keynote. Every year, in addition to the keynote, WWDC includes a number of breakout sessions, if you will, for programmers to meet with Apple engineers, meet with other programmers, talk about different ways of doing creative and innovative things. And this year, there were 150 plus labs, and about 30 of these sessions were live streamed for the first time. Which, as I say, I think that's a great idea, because it means that someone who maybe can't make it to California for whatever reason, or they're in California and they can't make it up to San Francisco, will be able to probably find some sessions that would be of interest to them. That's anytime you can do. I think anytime you can do that, that's a good idea, a good approach. It's always worth a little extra interest to have more people involved in it. Now let's get right on to some of the big announcements that came up. First of all, as I anticipated, and you didn't have to be a psychic to figure this one out, one of the things that they announced was some information relative to the next release of OS 10, 10.10.11. We're currently up to 10.10.3 on the Yosemite release series. 10.10.4 is in public beta at the moment. This deals with 10.11, which will be named El Capitan. It continues this idea of naming the OS after places in California. And those of you who are up on your California geography may know that El Capitan is part of the Yosemite National Park System, if I remember correctly. And there's some interesting things to come in this, in 10.11, OS X 10.11. Spotlight improvements, both in terms of functioning, and it looks like there might have been some speed improvements from what I saw at the keynote. The thing that is interesting to me is that I don't know that I would necessarily call it natural language speed searches, for those of you that are familiar with that, but the search capabilities that they demonstrated with Yosemite at the keynote seem to me to be closer to the kind of searches that normal people who aren't programmers, enter into search fields. Because this is built into Spotlight, it should improve search capability in Mail, Notes, the Finder, and other parts of OS 10. Those of you who have been around OS 10 for a while know that Spotlight essentially can be used to search across the OS, really, and even out into other things. So those improvements are going to come up. Something else which is either cool, purely for cool's sake, or something you're going to really enjoy depending on how you function. There are a couple of new gestures that are going to be supported in OS 10. They're not necessarily new if you are an iOS user, if you've been using iPhone and iPad. There were several that were mentioned, but the two that stuck in my mind were, because they were the easiest to remember. One is this kind of cursor shake to wake things up. Shaking the cursor with certain devices, like a trackpad, to touch and click. But the big one to me, the one that I will probably use a a lot. Now, to be honest with you, I'd almost forgotten that it wasn't already in OS 10, is gestures for delete when you're in mail. Now, normally, if I'm on my iPad, for example, I can tap an email, swipe to the left, and one of the options that comes up is to delete that email. A similar kind of gesture is going to be brought into OS 10. I think that's going to be a good idea for those of us that use the two devices. It's one more example of the integration between the two. And I'm not a believer in having everything about the iOS duplicated over to Mac, but that's one that doesn't disturb me. Some things do not translate well, going from a touch interface to a mouse or pointer-driven interface, but I think that we will. A couple of other things come up. Some simplifications in mission control. I'm going to be curious to see how that works. Maybe that will get me using mission control a bit more. I don't normally use that a lot now. It's tabs in full screen mail composer window. Having to have multiple things open, you can have tabs open in that. Drag and drop windows to create full screen windows. Dragging the window, say, from one screen to another to put it in full screen mode. Drag and drop windows to create a full screen is one. The other one, changes in the way the window, when I say Windows, I don't mean the Microsoft operating system. I'm talking about Finder windows and things like that. In the past, if you wanted, let's say that you had a large monitor and you wanted to have your Finder windows, two Finder windows side by side, each one taking half the screen. You could do that, but you had that third-party software. In El Capitan, that's going to be one of the things that you can do. Make some changes, some different ways of presenting the windows. The new Notes app, I'm using Notes right now to keep my show notes up in front of me on the other screen. The new version of Notes app is going to be able to deal with style text. You can bold things and this, that, and the other. Hopefully they'll keep that easy to do on the iPhone, but coming to the Mac, you'll have an easier way to do style text. But also some other things that, although they're small changes, might be an interesting thing. For example, when my wife and I go to the grocery store, I don't normally use the reminder app for that. Sometimes I find the reminder app just a little kludgy. It works for some things, but it's not a good fit for some other things. And I use Notepad sometimes to do a grocery list. Well, as you're going down the list, if you use the delete key to delete things as you purchase them, you're constantly accidentally deleting something. Well, one of the changes that it looks like they're going to be able to do in the new version of Notes is to have something where, let's say you've got a list of items, and you touch one of those in that list, it's going to mark it off as something that's been completed. It's not going to replace probably a reminder app or anything of that nature, but it will simplify some things. So that's a good thing to know. There are going to be some more improvements as far as speed and performance because of the Metal engine that they talked about last year at the Worldwide Developer Conference. There's Metal 2, some improvements there as developers get using it more. Some of the things, some games, a 10 times improvement in performance. Metal will improve graphics functions, specifically in some of the high-performance graphic apps. Some of the Adobe apps, for example, were showing, I believe it was an 8 times improvement in speed. That could be good I think particularly on the machines. If you have a machine that will still run it, where the graphics hardware is being a little challenged by current apps, that might be something that you will be interested in. While we're talking about El Capitan, let me mention, I don't know, we have a thread going on the forum, in the forum about El Capitan, people's initial reaction to the announcement. And the consensus of that thread, for the most part, seems to be that it's not an evolutionary change. It's not revolutionary. It makes small changes and improvements. You're not getting a complete rewrite of the findings. You know, the last 2 or 3 iterations of OS X, someone has suggested that the Mac needed a complete rewrite of the findings. That's not what you're getting in El Capitan. What you're getting is some refinements and some, for lack of a better word, improvements in the way some of the features behave, but you're not getting a complete rewrite. And that's okay for some people. Others are a little bit upset by that. They think it's time for a complete ground-up rebuild, much like the shift from OS 9 to OS X. So I'm sure that debate will be going on for a while. Chime in if you have something to say about that. That's not all of the announcements that came out of El Capitan, maybe not even the most significant ones for you. That's the ones that kind of stuck in my head as I was listening and taking notes. There are going to be some changes to iOS. Currently, iOS has about an 83% adoption rate. Of the people who can run it, who have hardware that can run it, iOS has about an 83% adoption rate. That's higher than you see with most flavors of Android. Something that has consistently happened in the past, and I don't know whether you'll think it's good or not, but one of the things that's consistently happened in the past is that the penetration. In other words, out of all the people who own iOS devices, what percentage is running iOS 8? And or when 7 was the current one, the question was what percentage is running iOS 7? That's what was meant by penetration. The penetration rate of 83% is pretty high for iOS 8. 7 had similar numbers. The thing that is amazing is how quickly those levels of penetration are reached on iOS devices. It often takes much longer than that for a similar level of penetration to reach the Android devices. Part of that is because of the variation in, say, from carriers and device providers. You know, if you have a certain device provider, sometimes you have to wait for them to update certain things in Android. Whereas when Apple pushes their iOS updates out, if your machine can run it, you're getting the update right then. iOS 9 is going to have some battery performance improvements to extend battery life. One of the things there have always been some things that you could do. If you were getting low on battery and you were away from your charger, there have always been some things that you could do to improve the battery life. Things like turning off Wi-Fi, turning off Bluetooth, which are not great, but there's still options there. And a few other things. Well, iOS 9, it seems like, will include a kind of battery-saving mode where once you go into that mode, it will perhaps turn off or adjust some things internally that you either may not be aware of or previously had not been able to adjust. The projection is, let's say you're told by your phone that you have an hour left, the battery, or roughly an hour, give or take. When you see that, if you invoke this battery saving mode, then it could extend it to as much as 3 hours. Siri, it is now handling something like 1 billion requests, information requests a week, with a 5% error rate. We'll see. There are some who don't believe that number. That number is not as important to me as the fact that the newest improvements to Siri in iOS 9 will extend some of the functionality of searching, using context-sensitive searching, where different things appear in a car. Let's say you do a search for something with Siri, and you're in your car at the time. And then you do that same search phrase when you're running. The results might be different based on what you're doing at the time. The call screen tries to make suggestions for unknown numbers. Okay, you can pay for content directly from the search app for search to find relevant apps. In other words, you're looking for something, it'll show you relevant applications. A lot of this info that's being used to improve search capability is done anonymously. It is not, I repeat, not tied to your user ID, your Apple ID. It's not driven that way. It's completely anonymous. And there were some other things mentioned that I'm gonna have to get my hands on. I'm going to tell you, the beta should be released soon, the public beta of iOS 9, along with the public beta of El Capitan. I have to tell you, if you have if your iPhone is your primary phone, if your Mac, you've just got the one Mac and it's your primary machine, I don't recommend putting betaware on it. It's not because I know that these things are going to be unstable. I don't know any secrets along that way. I haven't run either one of those betas yet. The public betas haven't been available, and I'm not a developer. What I can tell you is this: beta software has a high potential for having issues, no matter who the provider is. There are some people who should not, we repeat that, who should not be playing with the beta. And one of the things that you've got to be aware of when you start to play with the beta of an operating system, if it's your primary machine and something goes wrong, it can wreak havoc with your workflow and just cause all kinds of problems. So unless you're prepared for that, unless you've got backups of your data and you don't mind a little bit of a headache troubleshooting, don't bother. Let somebody else be the guinea pig. Couple of other things that we're seeing, huge increase over the last year in the number of places using Apple Pay. Now there are roughly 2,500 banks supported. New ones are being added all the time. The Apple Pay reader system now teams with Square. 1 million locations over the next month. New in-app payers added. And another thing that I like about one of the changes to Apple Pay, which I have not started using yet, but one of the changes, you can now have in your list of Apple Pay providers, store loyalty cards. So you go into a certain store and you've got a loyalty card for whatever it may be. In the past, you got to remember to pull that card out and give it to the checker and all of these things. I always forget I have the darn things, you know. I threw out a loyalty card not too long ago that I got something like 5 years ago that I'd completely forgotten about. It, of course, had expired, long since had expired, but Passbook, which is what this part of this system used to be referred to, is now referred to as wallet. Okay, and a big one for some people, if you live in major cities and are a mass transit user, the maps section is now going to include transit maps, and it's going to be multimodal. Okay, that's fancy smancy programmer speak for essentially saying it does a better job of dealing with situations where, let's say, for example, you take the train to a certain stop and then you get off and you walk a block, 2 blocks, or, you know, the example they gave is, I think it was coming into Grand Central Station. There are multiple entrances and exits. So if it's plotting out a route for you, it would be aware of which door you need to go out and give you directions and that. So you're not spending time wandering around the station, you know, looking like you're lost. That's going to be an interesting thing if it works well. The maps feature has been getting, you know, kind of interesting in the last year, or over the last couple of years. Some people love it, some people hate it. We're going to see some more multitasking capabilities in iOS 9, with more ability to split tasks and look at them side by side. PIP mode, picture-in-picture mode for video, so you can be looking at a video and doing something else. Trying to get a reduction in CPU use that goes along with increasing battery life. If you can reduce CPU use, you can make the battery run longer. And now, along with all of this thing, of course, there are new health metrics and the like. And finally, one of the things that came up was, they mentioned this in the beginning and then kind of got back around to it by the end of the keynote. Changes to the Watch OS. As you know, the watch has not been out very long, but already there are some changes to the OS in the works to both improve performance a little bit and also to give more apps access to some of the sensors on the watch. You have a way now to change the watch face, use a photo and turn it into a watch face. It can also include future info and past info, things that are coming up, and also does a pretty good job of searching back to things that have already happened. A nightstand mode where you can basically sit it sideways on the nightstand as it's charging and use it like an alarm clock, which would be great when you're traveling. You don't have to carry a digital alarm clock with you. I've long since stopped doing that. I use my iPhone, but having the watch and being able to set nightstand mode is a real convenient way to go after things. The communication now handles sets of friends rather than just the initial 12 that was handled with. Some of the fitness apps have gone native. You can move the logic to the watch rather than run it on the phone for certain programs. And then, you know, there were a few other things here and there. Some of you that already own Apple Watches will be curious about that. Logic can move to, the next thing was the Apple Music. Some changes to the way Apple Music is viewed. This is basically a streaming music service. It's similar in some respects to Spotify, Rhapsody, and some of the others. $10 a month, roughly. I think it's $9 and change. 15 for a family with up to 6 devices. There's going to be a 3-month trial for that. In addition to being able to stream the music, it would have some areas where artists can post things, new artists can post things, some interactivity with artists. So it's kind of a music app meets Facebook, you know, that kind of thing. It's going to be interesting to see what becomes of that. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with it. I'm always looking for a way to change around the way music is played. It doesn't appear that they're going to do the kind of rewrite that I've been suggesting that they do. This rewrite seems to be an admission that for some people, they don't necessarily want to own their music. They don't mind streaming it and paying a certain amount per month. And if $10 a month sounds like a lot, keep in mind, okay, let's suppose that you listen to 2 hours of music every day. Each track is a different artist. In other words, a different tune. Okay? I guarantee you that over far less than a month, you would have spent $10. So, for some people, if they, right now, if they have in the past purchased a lot of music, this may be a cheaper way to go. Tom, one of our other moderators, pointed this out. You know him as Bob Toomey on the phone. He pointed this out with some numbers that were just astronomical in terms of what somebody who's a semi-collector could easily have spent over the past of several years. For me, there's still some music that I would prefer to own. But that's just a matter of personal preference, and I suspect that for younger people, they might be more interested in streaming. For me, there are certain things I don't mind streaming. There's some songs that, although I like, I don't hear them enough to. I don't want to hear them enough to justify owning them. I can think of a few. I won't mention them. I don't want to tick anybody off, but you know, there's only so many times that you can hear certain things before your ears start to complain. So, you know, that would certainly be something that I would stream occasionally and not want to have in the library. The idea of having multiple devices registered to this, one of the things that it seems like they're going to change is handling that better, where you have multiple people sharing a music library. One of the problems that you have right now is if you're not very careful how you set things up, when you make a change to the library, it affects a lot of the other listeners using the library. Now, this seems like, from what I saw in the keynote, unless I misunderstood something, it's going to manage that a little bit better, so that your spouse, for example, doesn't have to see everything you have in the library, and vice versa, which is really helpful if you have kids and you don't want to listen to the same music that they want to listen to. So we'll see how that works. It looks like it has the potential to be really helpful. And that was pretty much it. That covered a lot of the things that I saw at the keynote, that from watching the keynote at home, that caught my attention. I did not expect any hardware announcements, of course, because they had announced some hardware updates recently. And the last several years, the WWDC conference has really been focused more on the software, particularly the iOS side of things. So I was not expecting any hardware changes. All of these are slated for release in the fall, sometime in the fall. My bet would be, based on past experience from the last several operating systems, that the public releases of these will be sometime late October. Look for probably the last week or so of October as a release date. I'm not privy to any kind of special information, any kind of insider information, anything like that. But that's what's happened the last couple of years, is that the final releases of the software will come out roughly the last week of October. And then I'm going to be curious to see. I did not hear any mention in the keynote whether El Capitan will include changes to the Photos app. That, you know, there was no mention of that. What I did see, or what was pointed out, first of all, it was mentioned during the keynote, if you have a phone that is capable of running iOS 8, it will run iOS 9. As far as the El Capitan is concerned, I was pointed to something after the keynote which says that if you are running OS Yosemite on your Mac, that it will run El Capitan. Now, as far as the iOS is concerned, my bet would be the following. If you are having, if you're running 8 and you don't like the performance, don't be the first one to update your phone to iOS 9. Let somebody else with a similar piece of hardware be the first one to update. Once again, it's not because I'm expecting a problem. It's just that every time something like this goes on, you will see, if you look back at some of the forum threads on Yosemite, for example, some people will have Yosemite running on older hardware and it runs fine, and other people say, I put Yosemite on my hardware and it, you know, it became a piece of junk. Okay, so let somebody else be the guinea pig for that kind of stuff. Don't be the first one. When you're talking about changes where your equipment is on the margins of it. If your equipment is the bottom end of things, let somebody else be the guinea pig and save yourself the headache. You might have noticed the patch logo on the shirt there. You can barely see the end of it unless I adjust the camera. That is my official Mac Forums t-shirt there. As you can see, got the little forum logo. I'll be using that from time to time in the broadcast just to let you know it's official. We're going to have a few more things coming up this summer. I'm going to try to do a few things that may spice things up a little bit, keep things a little bit interesting. We didn't get to tips tonight, other than one about dealing with betaware and not touching that. We'll get back into the regular tip routine next week. I hope you enjoyed the overview of the keynote address. The link to the keynote is on the Apple site. If you're an Apple TV user, there's a link there on Apple TV. You can find it either way. I encourage you, if you're interested in it, to watch the keynote. It's interesting, even though it does take up a little over 2 hours. There are some parts of it that are maybe more interesting to you than others. It's split roughly into even thirds. The intro and El Capitan stuff is pretty much in the beginning, although they mentioned the watch a little bit in the beginning. Then the iPhone stuff kind of toward the middle third, and then the final third spends a little bit of time talking about music and wrapping up a few other things, including a demo from a couple of them. So have a look at that if you're interested. And that's going to do it for this week's content. I hope that you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed putting the information together for you. We'll be talking to each other again back on our regular Sunday night run this week, coming up Sunday night. Haven't decided yet what's going to be on that particular episode. Working on that now. Stay tuned. I usually post the link sometime early Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, along with a little bit of a summary about what the show will will contain. So until then, this has been Spy Dude, your host. I'm glad to have you this week, and I hope that you will join me on Sunday for the regular Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening Mac Forum video show. We'll see you there.